Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Mia. I am really excited about today's episode. It was voted on in my Instagram stories by everyone who voted in the poll. It's all about how to set boundaries at work, and I'm extremely passionate about this topic. I have been a working mom for the entire duration of my motherhood. So that's 7 years now. I have 2 children, and I've either worked in a part-time or full-time capacity for that entire time. Right now, I, in addition to being a self-care coach, I actually am a senior communications manager at the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance. It is a nonprofit where we advocate for national maternal mental health policies. So if you're wondering, when I say I'm a maternal mental health advocate, I mean it in the realest sense. I help pass legislation in my work in the US. So it's really important to me that we create systemic change as well as trying to help ourselves as individuals through self-care. So the reason why I say all of that is because I just want you to know that it can be hard. It can be really hard as a mother who works outside of the home to navigate and balance all of that without burning myself out, because especially for those of us in the helping profession, and I'm not just talking about doctors and nurses and therapists, I'm talking about for advocates too, for all of us who are social justice advocates or activists, who care really deeply about an issue and we want to create change that can feel like it takes forever to get to that change. Or maybe you just work a corporate job where you don't, it's not necessarily considered the helping profession, but it really wears you out. Regardless, I think it can be really hard to set boundaries at work, but they are absolutely essential if you want to have any semblance of a life outside of work. And if you want to have any semblance of, your well-being, not always being teetering on the cusp of burnout. So I'm excited about today's episode. I have failed in a lot of ways when it comes to setting boundaries, and now I feel like I am really good at it. So this is the first time I'm actually putting this knowledge in a format like this. I have a class on setting boundaries, but it's less to do with work, so this is very specific. So I hope you find today's episode helpful. So the first tip I wanted to share with you is to stop thinking that having boundaries is going to prevent you from being promoted or getting raises. And I know this one is a little bit of a hot topic because it's like, well, Mia, there are places where if you don't slave away, they're not going to give you a raise or promotion, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a Black woman, especially if you're a person of color. And to that, I want to say, yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of toxic workplaces. And unfortunately, right now, it is an employer's market. And I say unfortunately because it's just, like my husband was working very part-time, like I'm the primary breadwinner, but he was working very part-time to support our finances and he was just laid off. So I want you to know that yes, this does happen. However, if you have experienced that kind of negativity or you've heard about it and you take that with you into every single place that you work, you're gonna just not set any boundaries at all. And then you're gonna end up with what? Maybe you'll get a raise, maybe, but you'll also get burnout and exhaustion and maybe some chronic illnesses on top of all of that. And I don't want that for you. So if you think that, if I have boundaries, I won't get promoted. If I have boundaries, I won't get a raise. And you bring that everywhere you go in your career, you're just going to be ill. And then you won't even be able to work in the first place. And I don't just say that, I've been there. A part of my sabbatical, when I moved to Portugal, I had to take 6 months off because I developed an injury in both of my arms called tendonitis. This is the first time I'm sharing this, actually. And it was because I let myself get overworked. And well, that's actually pretty unkind. But I tried to set boundaries and they weren't honored. And then I just kind of let myself get run over. And then I developed an injury in both my arms, and then I wasn't able to work for 6 months. And that was very heartbreaking. And now I have to be extremely careful with how much I work because I can aggravate the injury and bring it back on. So I just want you to know that I'm not speaking from just be positive. You never know when a workplace could be great. I'm actually saying that your health matters more than any workplace and than any raise or promotion. I know we need it with inflation especially, but I just want you to know that no raise and no brown-nosing a boss is worth losing your health, speaking from experience. And it is nothing worse than losing your ability to do the work that you love. It absolutely is painful. It made my depression worse, and I never want to go back there. And so a lot of these tips that I'm going to share with you today are coming from that fire because I have recently learned this lesson and I never want to go back. Sometimes I get messages from people saying well, my husband works in healthcare and they make him work 24-hour shifts. First of all, that's horrible. And I really hope that healthcare workers can I don't know what they can do. If they can unionize, they can organize. But I really think it's disgusting that we in America make healthcare workers not have any time for their own health. To me, that's a very backwards and messed up system. And the only thing I can say to this is from my own personal experience. I've actually changed and pivoted the industries that I've worked in multiple times in order to make sure that I am in an industry where I can have the boundaries that I need to support my well-being. Because for me, my well-being comes first, not my career. So if I'm working in a space or a field or an industry that doesn't accommodate or makes it too hard for me to prioritize my well-being, then I have to leave that career behind because no career is worth that. And I recognize that there will be certain seasons of my life when I might have more capacity to give to a job or to give to a career. But that time is not right now. My kids are young. I'm still very much in the middle of trauma therapy. I'm still very much in the middle of trying to get my sleep consistently good. I do not have the time to be working an extremely demanding job. I don't know what it's like to go to school for 10 years to become a doctor, only for the career and the healthcare field to treat you terribly. I don't know what that's like, but what I can say is I do know what it's like to give up on a career that you really cared about. I thought I was going to work in LA. I thought I was going to work in Hollywood. I really want to create and produce more stories that feature Black women in particular, but just better stories about women in general, especially mothers. And I just trust and believe that I will get to that eventually, that I will find my way back to that in some way, shape, or form, maybe as an executive producer, maybe as an investor, because now I do love what I do and where I live and what I do. So I think it's important to allow our lives to adjust and pivot depending on what our personal needs are. I think that's really important. One of my clients is actually a nurse, and she pivoted her career so that she's not working as a nurse in the hospital anymore, but she's working from home as a clinical supervisor. I don't know all the details, but I just think it's interesting how she's still utilizing her knowledge and her expertise in nursing to help people, but in a way that can support her well-being. So I just think that people are very rigid and they're like, well, this is the career that I have, this is the degree that I have, this is the industry that I'm in, and they don't allow for boundaries. And to that, I will say, that you matter more than that, and that your health and your well-being on this planet matter more than that career. And you're going to do so much more for you, your family, and your community when we have all of you and not a shadow version of you because you have lost all parts of yourself to a job. So that's what I wanted to say to that. So one of the, I wanted to share an affirmation before I moved to step 2 because I was writing and reflecting on this yesterday. And the thing that came out of me was, I can have boundaries at work and get promoted. If a job requires that I give them everything, then they don't want my work. They want my life. And no job is worth that. That really stuck with me because if a job wants everything from you, they don't want your work. They're not exchanging, they're not paying you for your work. They want your life, and no job is worth that. So really ask yourself, is the job I'm doing taking all of my parts of my life, or is this just, a job? It's really important to think through that. The second tip I want to share is to stop buying into the toxic idea that you need to pay your dues. This was something that was told to me over and over. I will never forget, I was sitting across the table from somebody who had been building their career for like 8 years, and I was complaining to them about my corporate job. I had just started. I was 5 months pregnant. I was exhausted. I was working 60-hour weeks. I was sleeping in my car during lunch in order to make it through the 12-hour days I was working. And this person looked at me and they were like, well, that's what you need to do. You're lucky they gave you a job. You owe them your loyalty. You need to prove yourself. You need to pay your dues. Basically this person was insinuating, how ungrateful are you? You should be, feel lucky that you have a job. First of all, I think a lot of us millennials have been really conditioned to believe that if we have a job, that that we are the ones who are lucky, that we should just bow down and give this job everything, when the employer benefits greatly from us giving our hours and our skill and our talent and our time to their goals and their job and their mission. They benefit too. And so I remember it took me so many years to really unpack all of that, and actually a whole year of therapy with a specific therapist. She was great. Shout out to Rakaya. She helped me understand that a job is supposed to be an even and fair exchange. An even and fair exchange. I am giving them labor for a certain amount of hours, and they are giving me money for that labor and time. That's it. I don't owe them my life. I don't owe them my loyalty. This isn't a relationship. We are not a family. And if it was so personal for them, then why are we seeing layoffs in the hundreds? Why are so many people being laid off? Because it was never personal for these companies. If they can find a way to utilize technology or what have you to increase their bottom line and to work a more lean operation so that they can give more profit to themselves and their shareholders, they're going to do it. There is no loyalty and personal connection coming from their side. So why should we have this mentality that we need to give all of our personhood to a job? Never, ever, ever reduce yourself so much that you think that you're the one who's lucky to be there when they're not also lucky that you're there. So remember, a job is an even and fair exchange of money for labor. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? So you don't need to pay your dues. You don't need to go above and beyond. You just need to show up and do the job that you both mutually agreed upon. And yes, this applies to those who are in the helping profession, okay? I remember I used to buy into this idea that because I'm doing social justice work, that I should work extra hard because, this is for a good cause. And you can't change the world if you're burned out. And that is something I had to learn the hard way when I ended up with an injury and literally couldn't use my arms for over 6 months. You can't change the world if you're burned out. You can't. Even if you're in the helping profession, even if people need you, I bet you therapists deal with this a lot. People being like, I need help. Why are you charging so much money for this? Because they need to eat too. They need to be paid for their time. And it's really important, especially for those of us who are helping other people, to remember that if we sacrifice ourselves in the name of a cause, then we are literally doing the opposite of helping people. Then we're no longer able to help anyone. We're no longer able to help anyone. I would rather help 10 people in a sustainable way than help 100 people for a month and then be burned out for the rest of my life and never be able to work again. Remember that when you are choosing to have boundaries with your work, you are choosing to be in it for the long haul. It's actually one of the most loving and emotionally mature and responsible things that you can do, especially if you're in the helping profession and you want to be helping people for a long time. Then boundaries are the way to serve yourself and other people for the long run. The third thing I want to share is you need to detach your identity from your self-worth from your job. You are more than what you do for a living. So I'm going to repeat that. You need to detach your identity and your self-worth from your job. You are more than what you do for a living. This is something a lot of us struggle with, myself included. I used to really make my self-worth about, how much I could get done in a day. Thank goodness I'm no longer there. But that's what fuels a lot of people's overwork. It's like, if that's the only place where you feel good about yourself, of course you never want to let it go. Of course you want to just do one more email, one more thing, take it the extra mile, go above and beyond. Because if that's where you derive all of your self-worth and confidence from, then you never want to have a boundary with it. And that's why it's really important to remember, and I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but remember that your value is inherent. You always had it. You had it before this job. You'll have it after this job. You have your value when your boss is happy with your work, and you have your value when your boss isn't happy with your work. Your self-worth remains intact whether you're unemployed, whether you're employed, whether you're the star employee of the month, or whether nobody even remembers your name because you work at a company so large that nobody knows who you are. I've been there. Your value and your worth has nothing to do with your work. It has nothing to do with your work. And while, it's nice to receive approval and appreciation from people around us, it's even more powerful and meaningful to regularly and consistently receive approval and appreciation from yourself. And this is something that you can build over time through, and I said this in the last episode, through regular affirmation, but also through your actions. We all know that saying actions speak louder than words, and it is absolutely true that you do that to yourself as well. Don't just tell yourself I love you in the mirror. Actually show yourself that you love and care for yourself through your actions. So it's really important to expand your identity and your sense of self. Who are you outside of work? Do you have hobbies? Do you even know what's interesting to you? Do you spend time on the things that are interesting to you outside of work? Or is work getting the best parts of yourself? So much so that you don't have time, energy, bandwidth, or capacity to explore anything else in this world. If you're somebody who derives all of your value and self-worth from your job, like I used to, it's really important that you take finding a hobby and expanding your identity very seriously. I mean, it could literally be from you going to the library and just exploring the aisles and seeing what topics interest you, to watching random documentaries on Netflix to find out, I really want to travel to Bali someday because I watched this documentary about it and it looks really cool. Or maybe you discover that you are an amateur baker and that you love to bake new things on the weekends and share those things with your friends. There's no other way for you to rebuild your sense of self outside of work than to rebuild your sense of self outside of work, one day at a time. So I hope that you can hear this as an invitation and have fun with it. Have fun with the process of exploring what you are interested in. For me, that looked like going back to dance class after 9 years of being away from a studio and feeling so clumsy and having no core muscles because I had 2 babies and feeling like the clumsiest person in the room, but it rekindled my love for dance and reminded me that I don't need to be the best dancer. I just need to have fun. And so I encourage you to do the same. What is your dance class? Like, what is your thing that lights you up and makes you happy and that reminds you that you are so much more than your job? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I have 2 more tips for you about how to set boundaries at work.
Have you ever gotten a little time to take care of yourself and then you're instantly overwhelmed with what the heck you should do first? Yeah, I used to feel that way too. I call that self-care overwhelm, which leads to decision fatigue and results in you not taking care of yourself in the way that you really need to feel nourished and filled up. This used to be a constant problem for me back when I had my second baby, and that's when I created the 4B self-care framework to help my exhausted mom brain figure out what I needed to do to take care of myself with the small pockets of time and energy that I had. In this framework, there are 4 types of self-care: basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. In my new mini course, I teach you about these 4 types of self-care. I show you how to prioritize, and I give you a printable to plan out your self-care over a 30-day period to help you go on your own journey of self-discovery to figure out what you really need to feel healthy, happy, and taken care of. You can get this mini course completely for free on my website at miahemstad.com/course. I'll have it linked in the show notes as well.
All right, welcome back. We are diving into tip number 4, and it is a juicy and spicy one. It's my favorite, and it is you can collaborate and be a team player without taking on other people's work. I know this is a hot take, but workplaces love to use terms like collaborate and be a team player in order to make you do more work than you signed up for. Do not fall for this, okay? Remember, This is supposed to be an even exchange of labor for pay. Nothing more, nothing less. You do not need to go above and beyond. This is not a family, and you do not owe them loyalty or your body and soul. Okay, so whenever someone tries to give you work and you're like, this doesn't sound right, this isn't really a part of my job description, you can absolutely respectfully put that work that's being unfairly placed on you back in the appropriate person's court. Just send a respectful email. Don't give a lot of explanation. Say less. Trust me, it's always a better route. Say less and put it back in that person's court. If there seems to be some confusion about who's supposed to do what and someone pulls the team player card, which happened a lot at this one job where I got my injuries from, and you feel like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm not being a team player, I'm being selfish. Like basically when someone's like, oh, you're not being a team player, it's code for you're being selfish, which if you were a good girl growing up, that is super triggering for you. So I want to name that because I want you to know that that's a landmine for us and to notice it. Do not react to it and go, oh yeah, you're right, I'm so sorry, I'll take this on right away, I'll have it for you end of day. No, do not react to that trigger, especially for those of us who grew up as good girls. What you're going to do instead is you're going to ask for a meeting with whoever is above you, whether it's your manager, whatever superior is above you. And you just want to have a respectful, transparent meeting where you get clear on what the roles and the responsibilities of your role are. What is your job description? Is it vague? Then you need bullet points. You need to get to the brass tacks of everything that is expected of you. You need to figure out if it is realistic, and you need to get on the same page, and it needs to be in writing. One of the things I did for me as a business owner, I do work as a senior communications manager, like I said, at this nonprofit. And one of the things that I'm so grateful for is I have an extremely clear contract of what I do for this organization. I mean, we're talking a table with detailed description and bullet points, and we're always having conversations about what is within my scope of work versus what is not in my scope of work. And this really protects me from basically doing too much, because when you work in communications, literally anytime someone speaks a word, they're like, oh, that follows under communications. I'm not saying they do this here, but this has happened to me. People are like, well, you're in marketing or you're in communications, so can you help me write this email because it's going to this organization? And I'm like, I literally used to write people's emails for them because they're like, but Mia, you're just so good at writing emails, and this is going to a partner and we don't want to sound bad, so can you do it? So I was writing people's emails. It was really, really bad. And I have since learned that people are not gonna pull you need to be a team player, you need to collaborate, and you're in communication, so help me write my email card. I go, no. Here is my scope of work. Here is the appendix that lists everything that I'm being paid to do. And that falls outside of my scope of work. And that's it. And then it's their job. It's the manager's job or the superior above you. It's their job to figure out who needs to do stuff. And it's your job to make sure that you protect your scope of work. You protect your job description and you get clear on what you need to do. And the reason why I am just so passionate about this is because I think a lot of us think that our managers are staying up all night. And I'm a manager. I have an assistant at this organization that I work at. Managers are not staying up all night going, oh, should I not have emailed that to them? Is that part of their scope of work? I wish more managers did that. I know I do because I'm very conscious about it, but I'm sure I make mistakes. But I just want you to know and have full empowerment that you also have the responsibility and the power to communicate directly with your manager and say, hey, I really would love to have a meeting about this. I feel like this falls outside of my job description or it falls outside of my scope of work. And I just want to make sure that we have clarity on, if this is a part of my scope of work. So please, please, please do not fall for the you need to be a team player thing, because it's just code for you're being selfish, and it really triggers those of us who grew up to always sacrifice ourselves and do too much and go the extra mile to the point of burnout. You do not need to do that, and all of that team player collaboration stuff, you don't need to do it. You were brought in to do a specific role, and that role that you play is being a team player, right? Imagine if you were like, oh my God, I'm going to use this sports analogy, and I don't even, I don't know much about sports, but I just think about like in basketball, right? Like everyone has a specific role. And if there's somebody who's like typically the corner shooter who everyone's like, get the ball to him because he's going to like get the basket in the corner. But he was told by his coach, oh, but you need to also play middle and you need to be running back and forth and you need to get the ball down to the corner too because everyone else is doing it and you need to chip in and do your part, then that person's not going to be in the corner ready to shoot the basket because they're so busy trying to also do what everyone else is supposed to be doing, which is running in the middle and getting the ball to the corner. And if we think about it that way, you can realize how absurd it is for someone to say, oh, but you should also do this other stuff too because you need to be a team player. It's like, no, we are all responsible for specific pieces of this organization, and by doing it, we make a team. You are not being an effective team player when you are doing a little bit of everybody's job. And all that causes, from my experience, is burnout and injury. So, I know I'm beating this really, really hard, but it's just like, I just hate when people utilize this language and weaponize it to get those of us who have a hard time speaking up to do extra work, and I don't want you to do that. So please have that meeting with your manager and set clear boundaries and expectations about what you're supposed to do. Okay, the last tip I want to share with you is to please remember that it's not your job to be liked at work. It is not your job to be liked at work. And I know that those of us who are raised to make being liked our prime objective, if you were a good girl, I want you to know that it's your job to do your job. It's your job to do your job. That's it. It's not your job to be liked at work. And I want to also remind you that, so many of us who are raised to be good girls, we carry this burden to be pretty to look at, to be likable, to never rock the boat, to not say anything that might offend. This makes it so hard it sets us up for so much difficulty when it comes to setting boundaries. And so, number one, I want you to know it is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to set boundaries. It's going to be really uncomfortable, but you will get better at it. Number two, setting boundaries at work is going to ruffle some feathers, especially with people who have no boundaries with anyone else, because the people who have no boundaries hate when you set boundaries with them. To that, I want to tell you, it's going to be very uncomfortable to set boundaries with those people, but you will live and they will live. And at the end of the day, you're the one who has to protect your well-being. Nobody can do it for you. You have to be your own best advocate at work. You have to speak up for yourself. You can do it respectfully. You can do it professionally, but you do not need to be so overly polite that you try to be liked at work to the point of not setting any boundaries at all. Yes, will setting boundaries at work trigger some people? Will it ruffle some feathers? Yes, but I want you to expect this and to remember that it's not your problem. It is not your job to be liked. It's your job to do your job. Set those boundaries and let people have their reactions. Do not try to control the reactions. I have worked in so many different places in the last 7 years in my career, and I will tell you what, anytime someone tries to control other people's reactions, those people always just exhaust themselves and they just are constantly spinning out and not getting their work done. I go in, I do my work, I set my boundaries, I do good work, and I get out and I live my life because I don't care what other people's reactions are anymore. I used to care a lot and it exhausted me and it wore me out. You need to let other people's reactions go. You cannot control them. Okay? So with that, just want to remind you again, you can be your own best advocate. You need to be your own best advocate. No one can do it for you. This is the work that is uniquely yours, but you can absolutely do it. And I hope that this episode has helped you and encouraged you and empowered you to set those boundaries so that work can just become one part of your life rather than absorbing all of your life, because you deserve to give the best parts of you to the other parts of your life that are meaningful and joyful and exciting to you. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I will see you next time. Bye.